Hi, welcome to Midwest Magic Cleaning. My name is Rickles Von Pickles, and today I wanted to talk about the top 5 things that nobody ever tells you about cleaning up a hoard. Now, this isn't just content just for the sake of content. I get hundreds of emails per week from people who ask me how to handle certain things in situations in their own life. Maybe they got their own hoard, their mom is in a really bad situation, they've got friends who they don't know how to confront about a really unhealthy, toxic household. I get those all the time. Statistically, most of the people who watch this channel will at some point in their life encounter a problem where they have to step in and help or they're asked to help. And I can just about guarantee that most of you who encounter that situation won't know what to do once you're there, because cleaning a hoard is way, way different than cleaning a regular everyday house. So the very first thing that you need to understand, and I think the most important thing to understand, is that not everyone that you help will be appreciative. And in fact, in many cases, the people that you help will be angry that you're there. You have to remember that when it comes to hoards or just a really bad, dirty house with lots of grime and stuff on it, you're typically not dealing with a neurotypical person. You're dealing with somebody who has a mental illness. And so when you go in to help them out, in many cases, it's not them asking for help because they have decided that they want to improve their lives and their household. In many cases, you're in there because social services have stepped in, or the local authorities or relatives have stepped in as sort of an intervention. And it's a thing that they're doing out of necessity rather than want. And so in almost every case, this is being done against their will. You are imposing upon their household, and they don't want this thing to happen. They're often embarrassed. They get angry. They'll go through almost the same exact steps that someone will go through when experiencing grief, because in many ways they are, especially with people with hoarding disorder. They have a connection to the objects that is as powerful as, say, the connection to their pets or their children. That is a neuropsychological problem, and I suggest that you read up on it heavily before you go in to clean the house of somebody who has this disorder. In their minds, this is not a gift. This is something that's being taken away from them. You will, in some cases, spend a couple weeks of your own time, maybe even a couple $1,000s of your own money to clean this place up, and then find out that either to your face or behind your back, the people will start saying things like, "It looks worse now than it did before. All they did was shove my crap into tubs and now I can't find anything." Or they threw X, Y, and Z away and that really shouldn't have been thrown away. In your brain, you know that X, Y, and Z was covered in black mold and mouse poop and it was unsalvageable. But in their mind, you've stolen something from them by getting rid of it. So the help part of that doesn't matter. They've put themselves in a very victimized position, and you often find this with the case of bipolar or borderline personality disorder or narcissistic personality disorder. And again, they can't really help it, and you have to be able to let that stuff bounce off of you. But when you're dealing with somebody with mental illnesses, there are a lot of times where they will victimize their situation and blame it on other people. That happens a lot. There have been 3 instances where once we were done cleaning the house, we found out that behind the scenes, the person had complained to the relative who originally came to us for help and said that the only reason we did it was to make money on YouTube. And so on 3 different occasions, I've taken down the videos and unmonetized them because I don't want them thinking that. It's not like I'm trying to explain myself to them. It's just that if that ever comes across that way, I don't want the video. Morally, I'm not going to put up the video and make ad money off of it if the person thinks that the only reason people are existing to help in life is to personally benefit themselves. So I just got rid of the videos. If you're going into these places expecting to be showered with praise, you're going to be woefully disappointed. You have to go into this expecting nothing in return. I mean, nothing in return. A very good example of that is Jason and I went 3 hours away from home. We stayed in a hotel for a week solid. We paid off their old delinquent bills. I think it was several $100s in delinquent bills. Paid for the dumpster. Bought them all new kitchen supplies, so pots, pans, glasses, plates, silverware, mixers, just all kinds of stuff. Replaced 100% of their groceries because the old ones had gone bad. And by the time we were done, the place was very livable. But after that, we showed them around the house, showed them where everything was, and said, okay, we're going to take off now. Thank you so much for letting us do it. And their response was okay, and they immediately sat down at their computer and started scrolling. Initially, I was really mad about that and offended, but then it taught me a valuable lesson in that if I'm going in here expecting backflips, I'm doing it for the wrong reason. This person could be on the spectrum and just not know how to show appreciation, or they could just be in a mental state where that just isn't a thing they think about doing. So if you truly want to help somebody, you have to go into this thinking, I'm doing it to help another person and not for praise or adoration or anything like that. I'm just making somebody's life better, and then I move on with my own life. And there may be some people that you help that you may even feel like don't deserve it or don't need it because they're able-bodied, able-minded. There was one that we had several years ago where we traveled 2 hours to his house. We cleaned up everything except for his bedroom. Is an able-bodied, able-minded young man, and he sat in his bedroom and watched anime while we did everything, which I was fine with because I told him, it's better that you're not on camera and just let us do the thing. But then we realized we had a 2-hour drive home, so it's like, okay, we wrapped up everything except for his bedroom. He can handle that. When I told him we were leaving, his response was, wait, you're not going to clean the bedroom? Like almost offended that we didn't clean his bedroom. And that one made me mad. But again, we took care of 90% of his house, and he can have whatever response he wants to that. I just know that I felt better leaving, knowing that we made the extra trip and that we freed up all the anxiety that he had about the rest of the house. Surely he can handle his bedroom on his own. The next thing that you need to realize if you're ever helping out in a situation like this is that the hoard is never fully gone. And in fact, in many cases, it's going to be at best half gone. So everything that you do, since you're dealing with somebody who has an actual disorder, is that everything is a compromise. You're going to have a whole bunch of stuff that you're going to look at and say, this is obviously garbage. It has black mold on it. It has mouse poop on it. I can't let you keep this. But to them, it's so imposing. It's the same thing as you coming in and saying, your dog is really ugly. I'm throwing that thing directly in the garbage. And you kind of have to put yourself in their place a little bit, because even though you can't fully understand where they're coming from mentally, you have to think about somebody coming into your house to help clean things up. And then going to your knick-knack shelf and saying, this decoration is really dumb. You don't actually use it for anything. It's just sitting there and collecting dust. I'm throwing it in the trash. And even to you, somebody who has a neurotypical mind, that is imposing and wrong. And it's like, what are you doing? This is my stuff. Why are you throwing this away? Well, multiply that by 100. And even when they attach those feelings to things that you know and I know are obvious garbage, it doesn't register in their head that way. They are always in a mindset of, I can clean this up, I can fix it, I can restore it, even though you know it's never going to happen. You have to pick and choose your battles, because sometimes you are going to come across those things that are toxic, and you're going to have one in the chamber to be able to throw that away. And the only way you can get that is to compromise on things that don't mean as much. So maybe they've got a bunch of knickknacks that are taking up a bunch of space, and they're covered with 8,000 inches of dust, and you know they don't care about them. And the second you try to clear them off, they're like, no, I've had these forever, I like them. And you're going to want to push back, and you're going to want to argue with them. That's one of those cases where I would just let it go. Clean them up, put them back. And that way, when you do come to something that's more important, like something that's toxic, you can say, look, you're keeping way too much stuff. We've already gone through this and this and this, and you've kept it. Let this one thing go. And then you've got a little bit of cushion there that allows you to throw those things away. But if you're doing a thing where everything you come across, you're pushing back on, then in their mind, it's just you coming into their house and wanting to throw everything away. And you're not going to get very far with that. So that brings up the question that I get from viewers all the time, which is, what do you do with all the stuff? So there's a couple of things, and one of them is more surprising than the other. The first thing is I try to consolidate things that I know they're not using on a daily basis. So if I find a whole bunch of just random collections of jars or something that they don't want to get rid of, I'm going to put all the jars together in a tub and stack it somewhere else. And just the sheer act of consolidation frees up a massive amount of space. But the more surprising thing, and it's something you don't see on a lot of cleaning videos, is that we typically have to pick out the least used room in the house and utilize that for storage. That becomes the hoard room. So in order to make the dining room nice and clear to where they can walk through it, it means we have to put the stuff that they do keep somewhere. And oftentimes that's a craft room or it's an extra bedroom that is no longer utilized. It's just some out of the way place to where we can store everything. So we have these nice before and after pictures through the whole house, but what we typically don't show you is the one spare bedroom that is now hoarded from floor to ceiling because we couldn't get rid of all the stuff that we wanted to get rid of. They kept way too much. So for instance, we did a cleanup for a guy who lost his wife and then the hoarding disorder really kicked in, and every room in his house was stacked with just stuff. He couldn't stop himself from going to estate sales and flea markets and just collecting everything from knives to hats to jars, just everything imaginable. And we had to do a thing where we completely cleared out a spare bedroom in the back corner of his house, got it cleaned up the way that we wanted it to be so he could walk in there and move around. But as we started to do the rest of the house, we realized the only place to store the stuff that he was going to keep was in that room that we just cleaned up. So we have to clean it up, clean it out, get rid of all the dust, wipe down the walls and everything. And then all that work we did on that room was just to make it clean enough to store the rest of his stuff. And it was so bad when we got it done that room was basically like you couldn't enter it. You definitely couldn't walk through it. You could step in maybe 3-4 feet into the room and the rest of the room was just absolutely packed with boxes full of stuff. That is the unfortunate consequence of hoarding, and it's the unfortunate consequence of compromise. But the one thing that it does do for them is it shows them two things. If we can get everything into that room to where the rest of the house is nice and open and clear and clean, it shows them what the house could be, and it gives them the relief of not seeing all that stuff around. But it also gives them the negative lesson of when they try to walk into that room, seeing just how much stuff is there. So the rest of the house is a really good lesson on a positive, open space that they can really enjoy without anxiety. Then when they open that door into the new hoarded room, it hits them like a fist. And in a best case scenario, they can look at that room and say, okay, I can see it now. Let's start selling some of this stuff off or donating it or whatever they're going to do with it. Worst case scenario, they just use the free space that we just cleared out to start hoarding more stuff. And you have to be okay with that. You can provide them a nice, clean, open space in their house. What they do with that after you're gone is not your responsibility. You did what you could. Always keep in mind that you can provide the help, but you can't provide the cure and you can't provide the therapy. That's something they have to do on their own. So let's talk about the pest extermination paradox, as I kind of think of it in my big old stupid brain face. So I get all the time questions about how do you get rid of the roaches? How do you get rid of the bed bugs? And the simple answer to that is I'm a cleaner and not an exterminator. And when I'm dealing with the house that has a really bad pest problem, this is something that's beyond a simple can of Raid. I'm not going to be able to just get some bug spray and get rid of this stuff. They're going to have an exterminator come in and professionally get rid of this stuff. Now, not only is that extremely expensive, but there's a paradox in which I would like the bugs to be gone so that I can clean, but they need it clean in order for them to get rid of the bugs. So if you got a house that's covered in trash and big piles of clothes and everything spread out all over the floor, most of the bugs are under that or inside trash bags, or they're in a place where the poison can't reach them. And so you can't just spray down all the stuff that's on the floor with poison and expect that to work. They have plenty of shelter, plenty of places to hide from that spray, and you're not really doing anything by spraying down the trash. So unfortunately, I do have to just dive in and deal with the bugs while I'm getting everything cleared off. We need exposed surfaces in order to do a true extermination. Once that's clean, then an exterminator can come in and spray down the baseboards and the undersides of cabinets and all that, and they can take care of it. But that leads to a second question, which is how do you make sure you don't take home things like bed bugs, roaches, and fleas? If the place is really bad, I'm going to go in with a disposable Tyvek suit. You can get those at Walmart or Menards or Lowe's, Home Depot. I just buy mine off of Amazon, and I will tell you that no matter what size you think you are, go 2 to 3 sizes up. So on clothes, I typically wear an XL. On a Tyvek suit, I have to wear a triple XL. You want those things to be loose and baggy because you're going to be bending over a lot and they tear easily. So I'll wear the Tyvek suit while I'm cleaning to make sure those things don't get up inside my pant legs or inside my shoes or my socks or whatever. Then I will take that off before I get in my car. In cases where I'm working without a Tyvek suit, what I'll do is almost all those bugs die on contact from contact with alcohol. I use alcohol for cleaning, so what I'll do is I'll have a spray bottle that has nothing but 70% isopropyl alcohol in it, maybe a few drops of dish soap to make it stick, and I'll spray down my pants, my shoes, and especially the bottoms of my shoes to make sure that if there are any eggs on me or any hitchhikers, they die on contact. But that in mind, one of the things that I tell the people I'm helping is that there is a no compromise rule that I have on these specific things. If I'm picking up clothes from the floor, especially if they've been there a long time, they at no point are going to look down and say, I really want to wear those pair of pants and that shirt that's been under this pile for 4 years. If those clothes have mold or any insects in them whatsoever, they automatically go in the trash. But especially if they've got roaches or bed bugs or fleas in them. If the bugs are living there, that means they have a nest there and they've got eggs there. The clothes are infected. We're not even going to attempt to wash them. They're just going in the trash. It's not worth the risk. And again, in many of these cases, those clothes have been down there for years. They're done. Those clothes are no longer a part of your life. They're a part of your problem. They're a part of your anxiety. Let's get rid of the anxiety by getting rid of the clothes. Now, while you're cleaning, you can, as you go along, take a can of roach spray or that alcohol that I told you about and spray down the visible bugs that you see, and that'll take care of the ones that are on the surface or at least in your area. You can do the same thing with bed bugs and alcohol. As you're cleaning up the room, you can just kind of pull back the sheets, lift up the mattress, spray all that down with alcohol, and it'll kill a certain amount of them. It's not going to solve the problem by any means, but it will reduce their numbers. And yes, you can treat the place with diatomaceous earth, but at that point, if you're down to the point to where you can treat that yourself with diatomaceous earth, you're now down to the point to where the exterminator can come in and just do all that stuff for you. You're not going to get rid of them on your own. You're going to need professional help. I think one of the more interesting points that I've found and learned over the years is that there's a difference between the number of products that you would use in a regular house versus a hoarded house. So I have a friend who goes by Cleaning Fairy Cherie, and she's very big on Facebook and really big on TikTok, and she's starting to gain traction on YouTube. She specializes in deep, extremely detailed cleans on regular, everyday houses. Now, because of that, she has a billion products that she uses for very specialized, specific needs. So she's going to use toilet cleaner on just the toilet because that's what it's meant for. She's going to use a shower cleaner on the shower. She'll use certain products for stains, certain products for grease, certain ones for dust. She'll have gadgets and brushes and electric brushes and just all kinds of stuff she uses for very specialized jobs. When you're dealing with a hoarded house or one that has extremely severe autism or ADHD and you have a buildup of grime and mouse poop and bugs and trash, you're basically going to use just 3 products. You're going to use a degreaser or some product that helps cut through grime. The one that I use is Mr. Clean's Clean Freak. You're going to use a sanitizer sanitizer, which I use alcohol. You can use bleach. You can use whatever that's going to disinfect. And then you're going to use a glass cleaner. Again, I use alcohol because I think it works better than Windex, but whatever you can use to get things like mirrors, windows, glass stove tops, and things like that clean. That's the only real 3 things that you're going to use. I've cleaned entire houses with just Lysol disinfectant floor cleaner. The all-purpose cleaner that you're going to use is just to get the grime off. Then you're going to follow that with a disinfectant. Then you're going to polish clean with glass cleaner, and in that order. The only other products you're going to use are the basics, like some gloves. You're going to need trash bags. I typically carry a paint scraper with me because some of the grime has been there for so long that it's stuck to the counter and it has to be scraped off. And then I use just a massive amount of rags that I don't care about. Something that whenever I get done with it, I can throw it in the trash and not have to worry about losing that much money. Because the difference between what Cherie does and what I do is that Cherie makes a house look brand new again and gets every crack and crevice in the entire house, including window sills and the tracks of sliding doors and the tops of light fixtures and cabinets that you don't even see. She does all that stuff. She'll clean grout. What I'm doing is I'm making a house safe enough to live in and emotionally put it to the point to where the person is proud to live there again. So my focus is get rid of the trash, get rid of the clutter, make it safe. I would love to one day do a house where I do my thing and get it down to safety standards and then bring in Cherie and have her go crazy with the house for like a week and see what we can do with it. But right now that's not on the table, but it would be awesome if we could pull that off one day. But anyway, if you ever have to help somebody out who's in this position and in this situation, and your big point of help is what mine is, the safety thing, just get those 3 products to start out with. If you want to come back later after it's safe and then polish up the wood and make the sink shine with Barkeeper's Friend and all that stuff, feel free. But like right now, bringing in all those extra products is overkill and you'll never use them. And that brings me to my last point, in which it's a case of theory versus practice. So before you go into a house like this, there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff that you think is going to make it easier. The most common thing that I hear is, you should have used a shovel on this. It would have made it a lot faster. Or I would have torn out that carpet. The problem with things like this is that they sound good in theory, but in practice, they're so far removed from the reality of the situation that it's almost comical when you hear people saying it. So a shovel would work if somebody's been evicted or they passed away and you know that you're getting rid of 100% of everything in the house. But even in those cases, you run into a thing where a lot of what's on the floor is clothing, and you can't get a shovel into that clothing. It's actually way, way faster to pick it up by hand and throw it into a trash bag than it is to try to use a shovel. Then the shovel sticks into the clothing and you run into a brick wall where you can't get the shovel in any further. Then you pull the shovel up and 75% of the stuff you just scooped falls off of it. It becomes much more of a pain to use a shovel than to just use your hands. Now, once you get all the big stuff removed, that's a different case. If you've just got a whole bunch of cans and food wrappers and stuff like that, then yes, a shovel makes more sense, and that's typically what we do. However, if the person is still living there, you have an added complexity. In many cases, and in almost every house we've ever done, underneath all that garbage, you'll find important things like birth certificates, credit cards that are still active. We once found the deed to many acres of land, like 30 acres of land. You'll find expensive jewelry, old wedding rings that were lost, electronics that still have value. If you just go in there with a shovel and you just get rid of everything and wipe it clean, you're going to throw away not just thousands of dollars worth of stuff that is salvageable, but you're also going to throw away important documents. I found wedding pictures from the 1800s underneath piles of garbage that were still in great condition. Had I just started going to town and throwing all that stuff in the trash without looking through it, those would have been just lost forever. I often hear things like I mentioned earlier, I would have torn out that carpet. Okay, and then what? Are you going to replace it? Are you going to replace the flooring underneath it? Or you're just going to leave them with subfloor? In all these cases, you're not fixing your own house, you're fixing somebody else's. Are you causing them more problems because the carpet looks gross? Yeah, it gets rid of a gross looking carpet, but then what? Carpet is not cheap. So saying I would have thrown out that carpet and thrown that couch in the dumpster, you're not thinking about, okay, how do we replace it? Where's she going to sit? Are you going to donate them a new couch? In theory, it's well-meaning, and in theory, it's correct. I would like to do this stuff a lot. I would have just replaced that toilet. Well, no, you wouldn't have, because you would have had to buy them a new toilet and then install the new toilet or pay somebody else to install the new toilet. How do you make the things that they already own work? It sucks. I get it. I want to do that with every house that I go into. And if I lived in a world where I had infinite money, I would absolutely do that stuff. I would buy them all new furniture, get rid of the old furniture, try to have their antiques restored and refinished or whatever to make them, safe and usable again. But that's just not the case. That doesn't exist in your reality. It just doesn't. But that also carries over into the types of cleaners that you use. So for instance, Cherie will not use toilet cleaner outside of a toilet because it's meant for a toilet. That's where it goes. It's not great to use it on other things. And in a regular house, that is absolutely true. But in a house that's hoarded and has 5 or 10 years worth of built up grime and grease in the bathtub, toilet cleaner is the best thing to use to cut through it because you can spray that down, spread it out, and then let it do its magic. Then you come in and brush it down or wipe it out or rinse it off or whatever, and the shower looks like brand new again. You're not going to really be able to do that with regular everyday cleaners. So there are many cases where I will use a floor cleaner that is meant for tile or linoleum floors on a countertop because the stuff that I use on the floor is more powerful and works better than just a spray all-purpose cleaner. We're dealing with extremes here, so we have to use extreme measures. Yes, it's true that vinegar will help remove limescale deposits on a regular everyday house. No, it will not do anything to a house that has 1/4 of an inch of limescale and calcium buildup. At that point, you're going to need something to chip it off. You're going to need a really powerful cleaner that is meant for limescale buildup, and sometimes that's an acid-based toilet bowl cleaner. Sometimes that is CLR, but putting vinegar on that is going to do absolutely nothing because it's so thick and it's so caked on that cleaning what we're cleaning is a completely different reality than cleaning a regular everyday home. So I get comments all the time that's like, well, I just use Zep toilet bowl cleaner, let it set for 24 hours and that stuff comes right out. Well, yes, on a normal toilet or a moderately, bad toilet, it will work just fine. I've used Zep. I like Zep. But not for what I'm doing. I need something more extreme and more powerful. Anyway, I hope this answers a bunch of questions because I don't think it's something that people talk about a lot on cleaning channels. And I know a lot of people ask for my help every week and I'm not able to do it. So hopefully this video will help you, point you in the right direction. If you haven't subscribed, please do. We are just about ready to hit 800,000 subscribers, which means we're 80% of the way to the gold plaque. Subscribing is free and it helps me out and there's no downside for you. Just hit the subscribe button and boom, you've helped out the channel. Members, I will see you all this Wednesday. Everybody else, I'll see you next weekend. Later.